And some breaking news just into us. Federal prosecutors just filed new charges against a Mexican state governor and 9 other current and former Mexican government and police officials for allegedly conspiring with cartel leaders, including the sons of El Chapo.
4:43 a.m., Culiacan, Sinaloa. The mansion was still dark. The gates were closed. The private road outside the estate was empty, and for a few moments, the entire property sat in silence. Then, the federal vehicles arrived. No sirens, no flashing lights, only black SUVs moving into position as federal agents, including FBI and ICE, joined by DEA teams, surrounded the private residence of one of the most powerful officials in the state. This was not a routine corruption inquiry. This was not a political audit. This was a coordinated federal operation tied to cartel money, protected drug routes, and public authority allegedly turned into a shield. At the center of the case was Governor Alejandro Cortez, a state leader who built his public image on security, order, and standing against organized crime. But according to investigators in this story, the mansion was hiding something far darker. They called it the governor's shadow vault. A hidden system where cartel payments, narcotics, untraceable weapons, and government access allegedly moved through the same private network. Inside the mansion, agents uncovered $118 million in suspected cartel-linked cash, $9.6 million in bundled currency, sealed financial ledgers, protected route maps, encrypted phones, and records tied to drug corridors moving toward the United States. Then came the narcotics: 210 pounds of fentanyl, 148 pounds of cocaine, 34 pounds of heroin, and beside the drug inventory, investigators found 47 untraceable weapons, 18 military-grade tactical devices, and 12 sealed equipment cases believed to be connected to armed groups operating across protected cartel routes. But the most disturbing discovery was not the money. It was the locked lower level. Behind a reinforced door beneath the estate, investigators found several adult women being held in rooms that did not appear on any official property plan. Some were frightened, some were silent. Some had left handwritten notes hidden near vents, under mattresses, and behind loose wall panels. According to investigators, the rooms appeared to be connected to a private exploitation network serving powerful clients, cartel associates, and people who paid for access. That was when the operation changed. It was no longer only about drug trafficking. It was no longer only about cartel payments. It became a case about power being used to move narcotics, control people, silence victims, and protect the men behind the money. To the public, Cortez promised to fight the cartel. But inside his own mansion, federal agents believed they had found something that looked less like a home and more like a locked empire built from cash, fear, and silence. Because this was not just corruption, this was political power allegedly turned into a cartel machine. The case was known inside the task force as Operation Shadow Governor, but investigators had another name for what they were seeing: the governor's shadow vault. According to the case files in this story, the method was simple. A cartel route needed protection, a shipment needed to move, a public official had access, and a payment allegedly made the road safer. This was not only about trucks moving through the night, it was about permission. A checkpoint that stayed quiet, a patrol that looked the other way, a warning before an operation, a convoy that passed through without being stopped. Investigators believed Governor Alejandro Cortez was not just taking money, he was allegedly helping build a protected system. The mansion became the meeting point, the place where money was counted, where protected routes were discussed, where encrypted phones changed hands, where names were written into sealed ledgers. According to investigators, the pattern appeared across cartel-linked payments, protected drug corridors, security contacts, and government access channels. The cartel moved the product, the officials allegedly opened the path, the armed groups protected the route, and the money came back to the house. That was the first layer. The second layer was the inventory: 210 pounds of fentanyl, 148 pounds of cocaine, 34 pounds of heroin. Alongside the narcotics, investigators found 47 untraceable weapons, 18 military-grade tactical devices. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. This was not random storage. This was supply. This was protection. This was a pipeline. But the darkest layer was not in the ledgers. It was behind the locked doors beneath the estate. According to investigators, several adult women appeared to have been held there as part of a private exploitation network connected to powerful clients, cartel associates, and people who paid for access. That was what made the governor's shadow vault so dangerous. It was not just a money room, not just a drug route, not just a corruption case. It was allegedly a system where power, narcotics, fear, and silence worked together. And the line investigators could not ignore was simple. The mansion looked like government power from the outside. But inside, it looked like the cartel had built a private kingdom. At exactly 4:51 a.m., the command was given. The private road outside Governor Alejandro Cortez's estate had already been sealed. One team covered the front entrance. Another blocked the service road. A third moved toward the rear of the mansion before anyone inside could reach the garages. For a few seconds, the estate stayed silent. Then the federal teams moved. The front entry was hit first. The side door followed seconds later. Agents entered fast. Security staff were ordered down. Phones were collected. Computers were preserved. Private offices were secured before anyone could reach the files. No one was allowed near the lower-level stairwell. Within minutes, the mansion was under federal control. What looked like the home of a powerful public official had become the center of Operation Shadow Governor. Then investigators moved deeper. They went straight to the room marked in the warrant, the governor's private office. Inside, agents found the first layer, sealed financial ledgers, and payment notes investigators believed were tied to cartel-linked money moving through political channels. But the real breakthrough came behind the office wall. A hidden panel opened into a secured records room. Inside were route files, names of drivers, and lists of payments allegedly tied to protected corridors used by cartel associates. Then came the storage wing, a locked interior room at the end of a private hallway. When agents opened it, the inventory changed the entire case. 210 pounds of fentanyl, 148 pounds of cocaine. Beside the narcotics, investigators found 47 untraceable weapons and 12 sealed equipment cases. The mansion was no longer just a political corruption scene. It was a supply room, a records office, a protection hub, a place where money, narcotics, equipment, and access appeared to meet under one roof. Then, agents reached the locked lower level. Behind a reinforced door beneath the estate, they found rooms that did not appear on the official property plans. The hallway was narrow, the air was stale, cameras were mounted in the corners. Several adult women were found inside. Near the lower level hallway, investigators found another file box. Not route maps, not drug ledgers, names, dates, hotel references, payment codes, and initials believed to be connected to powerful clients, cartel associates, and people who paid for private access. That was when the raid changed completely. It was no longer only about protected drug corridors. It was no longer only about cartel-linked cash. It became a case about power being used to move narcotics, protect armed groups, and control vulnerable people behind locked doors. By sunrise, federal agents had sealed the mansion. The cash was in evidence bags. The narcotics were cataloged. The equipment cases were numbered. The files were boxed, and the victims were moved out under protection. Then came the line investigators could not ignore. This was not just a mansion. It was a cartel command room wearing the face of government power. The first emotional shock came from a name written on the back of a receipt. Not a drug ledger, not a route map, not a stack of cash. A name. One of the women moved out of the lower level had written it in pencil, folded it twice, and hidden it inside the lining of a small bag. Under the name was a date, then a room number, then one sentence. They told me no one would ever find this place. That was when the case moved beyond the mansion. By mid-morning, investigators began matching the records from the governor's shadow vault with addresses across the city. Private clubs, storage properties, security offices, a luxury apartment building, a warehouse outside Culiacan, and a gated ranch believed to be connected to protected cartel corridors. The second wave began before the public even understood what had happened at the estate. Federal teams moved on 6 connected locations. At the first security office, agents found 21 encrypted phones, 8 sealed route binders, and communication logs tied to checkpoint movements. At the warehouse, investigators recovered 84 more pounds of fentanyl, 52 pounds of cocaine, 39 pounds of methamphetamine, and 9 sealed equipment cases believed to be connected to armed escorts moving along protected routes. At the luxury apartment building, agents found $3.4 million in bundled cash, private guest records, and payment notes that matched initials found inside Governor Alejandro Cortez's mansion. But the most important evidence came from the ranch. Behind a locked records room, investigators found a second set of files. Not official government documents, not campaign papers, private access lists, vehicle schedules, names of drivers, names of security contacts, and payment codes allegedly tied to cartel associates, political intermediaries, and powerful clients. That was when investigators began to see the full shape of the machine. The mansion was not the only center. It was the top of the system. The clubs were used for meetings. The warehouse held supply. The security offices moved information. The ranch connected people who were never supposed to appear in the same records. And the lower level beneath the estate showed the human cost. By afternoon, 17 associates connected to the network had been detained or taken in for questioning. 3 security coordinators, 4 drivers, 2 financial handlers, several property managers, and multiple intermediaries investigators believed helped move money, people, and information through the protected system. The public reaction came fast. People who once saw Governor Cortez as a symbol of order now watched federal tape cover the gates of his estate. Neighbors whispered from behind locked doors. Former staff members refused to speak on camera. And investigators kept asking the same question. How could a mansion surrounded by security, money, and political power hide so much for so long? According to the case files, the answer was not only fear, it was control. Control of routes, control of records, control of security, control of people who thought no one outside the estate would ever hear them. That was the deeper betrayal. The drug inventory showed the scale. The cash showed the profit. The equipment showed the protection. But the people found behind those locked doors showed the true cost. By evening, the case had spread from one mansion to an entire network. From protected corridors to private clubs, to storage properties, to sealed files, to names written in silence by people waiting to be found. And every new address raised the same question. How many doors had to stay locked for the governor's shadow vault to keep running? By the end of the day, the mansion was sealed. The private clubs were locked down. The warehouse outside Culiacan was under federal control. The ranch gates were covered in federal tape. And the records that once sat behind locked doors had become evidence. The cash, the narcotics, the untraceable weapons, the military-grade tactical devices, the encrypted phones, the protected route maps, the private access lists. All of it had moved from hidden rooms into federal custody. But for investigators, the most disturbing part was not only what they found inside the estate, it was what the estate represented. A public official's home, a place built on power, a place surrounded by security, a place where, according to the case files, cartel money, protected routes, private access, and human exploitation appeared to move under the same roof. That was what made the governor's shadow vault so dangerous. It did not look like a cartel warehouse from the outside. It looked like authority. It looked like status. It looked like government power. And that was the mask. According to investigators, the same man who promised order may have been sitting above a system that moved narcotics, protected armed groups, silenced victims, and kept the pipeline alive. The lesson was simple. A criminal network does not always hide in abandoned buildings. Sometimes it hides behind clean walls, behind official titles, behind private gates, behind people who know how to make fear look like silence. The money showed the profit. The narcotics showed the pipeline. The equipment showed the protection. But the people found behind those locked doors showed the true cost. By nightfall, investigators were still reviewing bank records, route files, property documents, and encrypted devices. More names were expected to surface. More locations could be searched. More accounts could be frozen. But one truth was already clear. When political power becomes a shield for organized crime, the damage spreads far beyond one mansion. It reaches the roads, the border, the neighborhoods, the families, and the people who were never supposed to be seen. Because sometimes the darkest part of a cartel machine is not the shipment. It is not the cash. It is not even the weapons. It is the locked door inside the house of someone who promised to fight it.